Welcome back to 101 Business Radio. I'm Michael Worthington, and I guess when we join in business and we work in business and we work in our personal lives, as we grow up we tend to change. But how do we handle the change, and at what points do we get to in our lives where we go, oh my goodness, what am I doing? How did I get in this position? And am I on the right track? And if I want to change the track I'm on, how do I do it? So what I thought I'd do is I get someone in who specializes in this area. He specializes in transformational change. Here we go. It's so hard to get my lips around that one. But he is a business coach, life coach, but really does specialize in the area of transformational change. And it's Tony Inman. How are you, Tony?
I'm excellent, thank you. How are you going?
Very good, thank you. And I've actually Lynn Volkers to join in on the conversation as well. Welcome, Lynn.
Thanks, Michael. G'day, Tony.
G'day, Lynn. How are you going?
Good, man.
Okay, so now we've done all the introductions. Tony, how do you get to help people with transformational change?
Okay, great question. Well, to start with, I usually meet them or I'm referred to them by somebody, and usually I start off with having a coffee with them and a chat.
Okay.
It's pretty basic. Find out what it is that they're looking for. What are the problems that they're stuck with? What's the thing that they're trying to change about either their business or their life?
Okay, and I guess one of the things, and we see it a lot in business, there's a lot of people out there say, well, I can help you with this, help you with that, help you with the other, in that transformational area that you specialize in. I guess the question then comes in, well, have you gone through any of this yourself?
I've gone through a hell of a lot of changes in my life. Well, to start with, changing country.
Right.
Brought up in Jersey in the British Channel Islands, and emigrated here when I was 23, 24. Yeah, been here I'm 55 now, so I've been over 30 years. Came over here first of all on honeymoon, and then talked my first wife into making the move to Australia. Going from a retail background and actually talking, or from supermarkets, and then talking Target into sponsoring me into the country, and coming out here working in discount stores.
Yeah.
So since then I've gone on a whole journey of career changes that...
Now I know one of the career changes I am privileged because I chatted you off air. So is you ran a backpackers hostel. Now that is well different than supermarket chains. That must have taken a whole change in mindset, attitudes. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey and what you actually brought to that experience to transform that business? Because you did transform that business. I know that for a fact.
Sure. It actually started with getting drunk one night, funnily enough.
Always the best business plans. All the guys are going, that's the best business plan.
Yeah, I had a friend over from the UK who used to work with me in supermarkets, and it started off as this conversation about, if we'd been in charge of the company back there, we could have made all these changes and done things better. One thing led to another, and drink after drink went down. And then the idea came up, well, we should start our own business. And, well, what sort of business should we start? Well, I was actually brought up in a hotel environment. My parents were guest house and hotel owners in Jersey. So, I used to serve in the bar when I was a young man and check in guests and all that. So I was familiar with the tourism industry. It was in my blood. And my friend just happened to have bumped into some backpackers on the way over.
Right.
And so the idea of, well, why don't we start a backpackers came up. So then we had to the first hurdle was to get him into the country. So we had to do a business plan that was good enough to convince the Australian government to let him into the country. That was the first major hurdle. And that took us about a year to go through all that exercise. So there we are, two young guys, sort of mid-20s with really very little experience other than sort of junior management experience. And no money, of course. And trying to raise $1 million to build our own backpacker hostel that was going to be a purpose-built thing. Wow. With all the bells and whistles, we had this great dream. And wondering why we couldn't convince any millionaires to invest in us. So we ended up doing a sort of a backdoor approach to getting into business, I suppose. We managed to find somebody who was pretty much going broke with the business that he had, and we did a vendor finance deal. So he effectively sponsored us into the business, where we paid him off over 3 years.
Now that's interesting, because a lot of us are trained in business. We look at the profit sheets, don't we? Look at the balance sheets, and something going backwards, we tend to go, well, it's got no value to it.
Yes.
But that attitude, that's very interesting. You wanted something, so you went, well, that didn't seem to play a part in your mind. Why was that?
I think because I've always been visionary in that sense of what I want, and I go after what I want. So even just coming to Australia, I had to fight to get in here. I had to convince Target to break their company policy to offer me a job in the first place, and then convince them to hold on to that job for a further 18 months just to get through the red tape to get into Australia. So I've always had that sort of self-belief that I can make things happen.
Is that important when you come to transformational change? If you want to transform your life into something that you really, really want?
Yes, it is. I think sometimes you also need that help from other people who believe in you, which is one of the things as a coach that I can add to the equation. A lot of people want to change, but they get stuck with all the obstacles, and they're focused on all the problems and the obstacles, and they know they want to change, they know they can change, but they're not sure how to go about it. Sometimes you just need that external, somebody believing in you to enable you to move forwards.
And was this your business partner when you went into, was that your edge that you had above somebody else, someone else actually believing in the same vision as you had for the backpackers?
I think it probably helped. We were two young guys who were fairly motivated, both quite capable of believing that we could make things happen. Yeah. That can also, I've sort of fostered a belief as well that your greatest strength can also be your greatest weakness. So I went on this journey. I ended up buying him out after 2 years, and I went on this journey of being an entrepreneur where I at one point had 5 businesses on the go at the same time, and it all got a bit crazy in that I married my second wife just before I started this journey into that business, and she ended up becoming my business partner once we bought out my first business partner.
Okay, so I interrupt you there to just go on a bit of a segue, but coming back into, you've got this business, it's going backwards from this other guy, and he's vendor financed it in. What was going through your mind? What could you see, and what was it you went, actually, this is what it should be like? What was this vision that you had for the place, and what did you do to turn it around?
Okay, that's a great question. I think right at the beginning, I had this vision of creating an experience for people, creating more than just a place to stay while you're on holiday, but creating, actually, funnily enough, a life transformational establishment. So isn't it funny how it comes full circle?
It is.
To the point where I've actually had people stay in touch all these years. People we're talking back, 20 years ago now, from some of the first people who first stayed in that backpackers, and some of them, because back then in the early days, Facebook wasn't really what it is now. No. And the internet, in fact, there's a good example of how fast things change. When we first started, people used to come to us with a handwritten page letters for their families back home in the UK or Ireland or wherever they came from, and they'd come to us and ask if they could fax it to the post office near to where their family lived. And then by the end, 14 years later, they were all sitting there with their tablets and iPads and laptops. And
it's a bit like when you go to weddings, isn't it? It doesn't do telegrams anymore. You've got emails now.
That's right, yeah. We actually had a payphone to start with. And you remember the days back when you used to have that echo on the line, and you'd be phoning someone in the UK and you're talking over the top of each other? So that's what it was like in the first days in the backpackers.
So the experience, so that was a key. That's a key word. That's a very interesting word you used there.
It was, because when we started, we had no money, as I said. So we walked in, the place was a dump. Literally, it was, really run down and tatty, and everything needed changing and refreshing. And I called a staff meeting the very first day, the staff that we inherited when we took over the place. And I said to them, look, I've got this vision of what we're going to do with this business. It's run down, it's a mess, it's a dump. We can't change that overnight. We don't have the money to change it, but we will change it. It's going to take us time. We'll gradually do it. But what we can do right from day one is to deliver an experience that's way better than everybody else's backpackers in Perth. So what we can control is customer service levels. We will make it the friendliest, most exciting, most atmospheric place we can, because in 5 years' time, when people are thinking back and remembering their holiday, they're not going to remember what the state of the curtains were or whether there were stains in the carpet or whatever. They're going to remember the people they met, the experiences they had, the fun times, the adventures.
It's all about relationships.
The friendships, yeah, absolutely, the relationships.
That word experience, and we hear it many times in business, and I guess you'd look at a Steve Jobs and he says when you buy one of his computers, I know he's passed away now, but one of his comments used to be, I want the experience to begin as soon as you put your hands on the packaging. And what a great analogy, and you're picking up here. So what are some of the things you did to create the experience? Obviously, we talk about Jobs and the billionaires like that.
Yep.
But what did you do? Because this is a really grassroots, and a lot of business people I think could lock onto this and go, what am I doing to create an experience for my clients?
It started before they even arrived. We changed our slogan to 5 stars for atmosphere,
You're really telling them what they're going to get.
Yeah, that's right. And so when people arrived, one of the first things we did was, typically when you arrived in a backpackers hostel in Perth, well, let's go further back to how they arrived. You'd usually go and meet them at the Greyhound station. So this was the days before Virgin came in, and there was people flying across the country. Back in those days, the main transport was the Greyhound buses or the Indian Pacific.
Yep.
So we had to go and meet all those buses and stand there touting with leaflets in our hands. And when we first arrived, the other people from the other hostels used to turn up scruffy looking, with a car that was held together by rust and blue tack. So one of the first things I did...
You're a backpacker in his own image.
Yeah, exactly. So come and get into my car.
Yeah.
So I changed that straight away and said, well, we've got to get ourselves a bus. We're going to get it sign written. We're going to look professional. We're going to get T-shirts or polo shirts for the staff. We're going to have uniforms. We're going to look professional, look the part, come up with some great leaflets that really sell the experience. So pictures of people having fun and so on in the leaflets. So when they arrived at the hostel, the first thing we did was make them feel welcome. Now, if they had come in off a late night flight or something like that, make them a cup of tea. That's one of the basics. We like a cup of tea or coffee while we're checking you in. Straight away, take care of the refreshment side of it, and then be friendly and welcoming and give them a map and show them where they are in the area. And instead of what most hostels would do is say, look, your room's around the corner, up 3 flights of stairs, and see you later, we've got your money, no, we don't care about you. We would actually physically take them around the building, show them all the facilities, and on the way around we would introduce them to other people that were staying there. Now, when you first arrive, you're not going to remember all those names. It's like when you turn up at a party and it's like, oh, this is so-and-so, you don't remember. But you've got, at least the ice has been broken. You've got the person smiling back at you and sort of acknowledging you.
Yeah.
So straight away you break down that barrier of feeling like you're the outsider, you're the person, the newbie on the block. And then a few weeks later, of course, that rolls on, that the people who are then entrenched in your backpackers then think back to what it was like the day that they first arrived. So they immediately go out of their way to welcome the new person. So it rolled on. We built an atmosphere and an environment and a culture, if you like. We turned our customers into our ambassadors. So they became the welcoming party.
Yeah.
So, somebody's walking through, oh, this is John from Nottingham. Oh, this guy's from England as well, where are you from? And so we'd start the conversations. But we'd keep them moving around. So on the way around, just showing them around the property, they'd meet, half a dozen people that they then, they might not remember their name, they didn't really know them, but at least they could feel comfortable to go and talk to that person.
Yeah, they smile and nod to them and that recognition. Yeah,
exactly. And it became a place where nobody was left sitting on their own looking miserable. Somebody would go up and say, are you okay? Is there anything I can help you with or whatever? So everyone became part of something. We actually created a family, really like a global family, where you became part of a culture.
That's amazing. So it was really looking at, okay, if someone comes into a backpackers, so they're going to come to my business, you were really looking for the spots of how I can create an experience based on your own interpretation, what they might have felt like, might be just a bit uneasy, don't really know what to do, don't know where things are, don't know who to speak to.
Yes.
So already you were looking at points in your business to go, that customer, I can bring them in, and if I deal with these issues for them,
yes,
the experience and the words is beautiful you use, the family just comes in. They go, wow, I toured the world and this is probably one of the best places I've ever been because I've actually felt welcome.
We had lots and lots of people say that to us, and we had loads of people would go all the way around Australia and always come back to us. We had people who would make return trips from all over the world to come back to our hostel. Some people, 4, 5, 6 times they would stay. And it was because we cared about people. We actually genuinely cared about people, and we made them feel like they were part of something.
So when you take that to your business owners and people who are looking at their own lives now, is this one of the points when they say, look, I come to you and say, look, I want to change. Is this one of your starting points? You say, well, hold on, what's the experience you're trying to create for the next part of your life then? What is it that you've missed out on or you've experienced maybe in the past and want to experience it? Is this some of the questionings that you start to uncover from them? Maybe questions they've never even asked themselves.
Oh, definitely. I ask people a lot of tough questions.
Yeah.
I'm squirming in the chair sometimes. With all sorts of emotional reactions because, well, one thing you do know is when you're unhappy or you're unfulfilled, you might not know what it would take to fill that void. One of the things we found a lot with the backpackers is a great sort of kind of euphemism for life in general, actually, really, because it was an environment where people were trying to deal with things. They were trying to escape from something or discover themselves, or a lot of them say they was on their gap year, for example, they studied something for years in university and then gone, hang on, I've just studied for a few years to be an accountant. I really don't want to be an accountant, but what the hell do I want to be? So we had a lot of that kind of thing, where people with relationship breakups dealing with that sort of stuff. People just at turning points, crossroads in their lives. So I suppose that's where I got my greatest training, was the conversations I had over a beer in the back garden with people about what was going on in their life, and throwing suggestions. And I'd get people come up to me and say, oh wow, what you said the other night, that was just amazing. And I'd be like, yeah, cool, what did I say?
So when the business people come to you in particular, and they obviously we're all trying to grow our businesses, and there's challenges and there's obstacles in our way. Is it these experiences? Is it okay, as talking about what do they want to experience? Now you also then bring in and say, what is it you want your clients to experience? Are you now saying to me, and this is what I pick up, and a lot of your styling is around this, if you're going to transform yourself, it's really transform it so you get the experience you want, but also the experience your client wants. The client wants this experience when I deal with you, and giving them that. Is these some of the guidepost kind of things that you're using to help your clients transform to that next level?
Yeah, there's a few points there. I mean, if you're looking to build a business to the next level, certainly the biggest thing in business is being aware of what your client wants, what your market is. And so many businesses, small businesses especially, haven't really truly defined who their target market is and how they're going to satisfy their needs.
No.
They just, a lot of them adopt that sort of shotgun approach of, just, serve anyone or sell anyone anything that they can. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are stages where you have got to take a bit of a shotgun approach when you're first starting out, maybe to pinpoint exactly who you're targeting.
Get a feel for it.
Because you might have a wrong interpretation of the market. Sometimes the only way is to try a campaign and see where it leads you. Profiling is very, very important, being aware of who you're really trying to reach. And then feedback, checking, just because I think that's the target market, is that really what's going to work? And looking at scalability. And I think one of the biggest things that I learned from my whole experience of having numerous businesses, I in total probably started about 20 businesses.
I was going to say, because the backpacker's only one, I just picked on that because I just really love that story there.
Well, the biggest thing about it was I never really had an exit strategy. I was living in an all-consuming bubble. I had a 24/7 business that never closed. Even on Christmas Day, I'd be there cooking barbecues or doing things with people. And even when I took time off, there was always something going on, that you'd have to then go back and deal with. But the key to that, finding good staff and having good systems. So that's one of the stories I use now in where I'm coaching people, is I managed to get to a point where I was able to take 2 months away from my business at one point after I'd had a 2-year period after my second marriage broke up, and I needed a holiday badly at that point. I went away to Monkey Mia for a week. I was dating a Swedish girl at the time who was about 10 years younger than me, so that's always good for the ego. But I thought I'll get away to Monkey Mia and then I'll just have that bit of a break and come back. And I got on the phone to my staff, and they're all having a fantastic time and doing really well, and the figures are there and everything's going fine. They're like, yeah, you'll be fine, keep going. So I thought, all right, I'll go up to Broome, and I'll sell the car and fly back. The car being one of the cars I had off my hire car, off my car yard that I owned as well, Backpackers Car Yard and Backpackers Hire Cars. Yeah. Another business I set up. But it ended up, I then thought, it's all going still really well, so I'll go on up to Darwin and visit an old friend. And one thing led to another. I ended up 9 weeks later in Cairns, having driven all the way from Perth to Darwin to Cairns.
Part of Australia is Cairns, one of my favourite spots. Yes.
It was only when my 15-year-old daughter had found a mobile phone in the drawer that my ex-wife had put in a drawer somewhere, and it was still live, and so she started thinking, a free phone, I'll ring my mates, and ran up $2,200 phone bill in a month. That put a swift end to my holiday. I had to fly back to Perth and get things back on track.
Yeah.
But so going back to your previous question about change, really all business starts with what's going on between your ears. It really starts with you being clear about what you want and how you want things to be, and getting that, then putting a strategy in place to achieve that, and being aware of where it could end. It doesn't have to be set in concrete, but having an idea of how you might exit the business and then being able to prepare and sort of move towards that.
That's the second time I've heard you mention that, learning how to exit the business. You're dealing with that pretty up front there, aren't you?
Well, I talk about it a lot because it's something that it's one of the big lessons that I learned. I got caught where, what finished me off was the global financial crisis, where we literally went from 100% occupancy in the summer to 50% overnight. And that's the impact. There's some people say, the global financial crisis didn't affect us. Well, boy, it affected tourism in a big way. It affected retail too, but tourism just floored us. And even though I'd diversified, I had the backpackers accommodation with a licensed bar. I had a car dealership, but it was mainly focused on the tourism market. I had hire cars, which again were mainly for tourists. I was doing my own tours. I had a tour bus and did wineries tours and trips to the pinnacles and things. And I had apartments, but they were again mainly tourists that were occupying those apartments. So although I'd diversified, it was all the same core industry. So when that went down, I was, oh no.
Yes.
So now I've got my coaching business. I've also got a cleaning business. So that's quite a different area, and it's all year round income and cash flow. So that gives me the base to be allowed to focus on what I really like, which is helping people to make changes.
And do you find that when a lot of people come to you, they're looking for this transformation, this change, but maybe exit strategy isn't in the equation until they talk to you?
Oh, very often. It's quite a common occurrence. 'Cause, I mean, after all, when you start a business, you're all fired up with enthusiasm. You know, you've got all these plans about how you're going to take on the world and make everything happen. Who wants to be thinking about leaving and finishing it all? You're just excited at the moment.
It kind of doesn't match, does it? Yeah.
So, yeah, that's why you actually need to think about it, and it takes someone external sometimes to say, well, hang on, just give it some thought. You don't need to have necessarily, like I said, in concrete, but what if you suddenly got sick and you had to sell the business? Or what if circumstances just change on you overnight, like happened with me? What is your contingency plan? What's the alternatives? But more importantly, I look at it, this is why I very first asked myself, do I want to be a business coach or a life coach? And I realized very quickly that the two are completely intertwined. If your business is going down, it's going to affect your life. If your life's in turmoil, your business is going to get stuffed, Yeah. So you've got to consider both, and you've got to have some sort of strategies in place. And the big thing that I look at is, what is your business going to do for you in the overall context of your life? That's my approach, because your business is really just the vehicle to get you to where you want to go. Now, for some people, if you're lucky enough to find that thing that you're really truly passionate about and you could see yourself doing it the rest of your life, that's great. But these days, we're all quite prone to want to change things after a few years. We're in a sort of consumable, disposable society.
We are. I mean, I remember when my grandfather said, he took his first job at 14 years old and stayed there to 65 years old.
Yeah.
You tell that to some young person coming out of uni today, and they'll go, "You're crazy."
Absolutely. I mean, we are all sort of projects in the making now. You've actually got to become a marketer of yourself and your own services. You cannot rest on your laurels anymore. You've got to stay at the cutting edge. You've got to keep honing your CV. You've got to keep learning new skills. And in any business, if you don't, I have another saying: if you're not moving forwards, you're actually slipping backwards.
Yes.
You won't just stay still, because other people will start to overtake you.
And it's so difficult if you do start to slip backwards in this day and age, even catch back up again, never mind get in front. I mean, we see it in information technology. You talk to IT guys, if they're not consistently honing their skills, consistently doing the Microsoft courses, if those Microsoft courses lapse, if their accreditations lapse, they're unemployable. It's a tough gig, and it is a constant, you keep learning, you keep pushing.
Yeah, and that puts its own pressure on, and if you keep doing that for long enough, there may come a point after a few years when you think, I'm not really enjoying this anymore, I want to go and do something completely different. And I love those sort of stories. I've even written a book that includes a lot of those things. It's called If Life's Worth Doing, It's Worth Doing Well.
Yes, I've got a copy of that. We're going to talk about that in another show.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I love those stories, where you get, say, an accountant that goes, to hell with this, and goes and runs a bookstore in Byron Bay or something. It's complete sea changes, because that's what life's really about. It's a rich tapestry, and to go and explore your own character and explore how you cope with different situations. I mean, maybe that's just me, but that's one of those adventures. I love going on adventures, and I love travelling.
I don't think you're too far off the mark. Some of the best-selling books are about characters that go off the grid, for want of a popular term. Why do we like those books so much? Well, because we're all going, I wish I did that.
Absolutely. Well, I lived for 14 years in an environment where a lot of people were doing that on a daily basis. There's people that were really changing their lives through the backpacking world.
So people who are running a business, got their lives going, and they're at that point now, probably the seas change is probably one of the terms, or they're just going, I really need to have a fresh perspective on this, and we all know it's very hard to look at ourselves. It's easy to look at somebody else. I always say this, I can fix anybody's business because I'm not in it, but I'm sure they're looking over the fence and saying, I can fix yours, Michael, too.
We're all guilty of that. It's always easier from the outside.
It is. So it's very advantageous to have someone, not just a coach on business and on life, but on transformation. Someone's actually done a lot of businesses, been through massive amounts of change themselves.
Yes.
I think that equips you with the right type of questions, the right kind of depth and understanding.
For sure. Well, Tony Robbins says, if you want to improve the results in your life, start asking yourself better questions. A lot of the time, the problem is that people don't know what questions they should be asking for themselves, and they get stuck in a loop.
And I think the other problem, and I'll hold my hand up, I'm probably guilty of this, we kind of don't want to ask ourselves some of those questions either. Might just avoid that one. I'll ask that next week.
For sure. A lot of the times, change is about comfort zones as well, and we can, another word for that is rut. We can get caught in a comfort zone where we've done it that way, we've always done it that way, it's always worked, but guess what? It won't work in another few years because somebody else will start doing it differently or better.
Someone told me a rut was a grave without ends on it.
That's right, yeah.
Someone in that position now, listen to a show, says, you know what, it's worth having a chat with Tony. What's the best way to contact you?
Well, you can contact me by phone or by through my website, or www.clubred.com.au.
Yep, Club Red, your website and your business on that.
Yes.
And if they want to send you just an email, because sometimes people are a little bit shy. Hey, we've all been there. Maybe just pop you an email, ask you a question. What would be the best email for you, Tony?
Tony@clubred.com.au.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks, Lynn.
Thanks, been a pleasure.
And stay tuned. We've got much more coming up on 101 Business Radio.